Okay, so the objective of this video is to help you to use chatty emotions, and more particularly the teach part of emotions. So if I click on emotions, I'm going to focus here on how to use the teaching part of the module. So you click on teaching, and the likelihood is that you've already done the screening for a child and you know exactly which gaps the child has got. So in the previous video, we screened Rosa and we found out that she, in level 1, I think she was able to recognise happy and sad, but she didn't really understand any of the others. And I think in level 2, she was okay with sick, but not with the others. So equally, you might just be using this as a whole class tool, and so you're not particularly bothered about screening every child. So you might just come straight into teaching and start using these resources on a smartboard, for example. So let's go into level 1, and you can see the 6 key emotions that are listed here, and these are the slightly easier emotions that children would learn earlier on. And you can work on each one of these emotions. So we won't bother going into happy and sad. We'll make a start with Rosa on angry, because that's one of the ones she didn't have. Click on angry, and then you can see all your teaching tools along the top here, and then you can see the games along the bottom. So the idea of these games is it's a bit of fun for the child, but more importantly, it's what we know from theory as repetition and consolidation. And we know that that's really important for a child to hear the word, be exposed to that word lots of times in order for that word to become part of, embedded into the child's vocabulary system. For a child who's typically developing, it's generally about 15 exposures for each word. Any child who's got a language disorder, for example, a language developmental disorder or autism, or other things that might be difficult for a child, then it might be as many as 35 exposures or repetitions of a word. So it's quite a lot of legwork to do. You can't just show a child a word once and then they'll know it and remember it. They've got to be hearing it lots of times, and they've also got to hear it generalised out of what we're doing here in Chatty Toolbox into everyday events and everyday environments. Okay, so let's start off with angry. And in word cards, we get to see what that facial expression looks like. And this is quite important because some children really struggle with understanding facial expression. And it's important that we help them to understand what a face looks like and what that means when the face looks like that as well. That might seem obvious to you, but for some children, that's a real difficulty. So we can see that in 2 different faces there, and obviously we'd be talking with the child about the eyebrows being pushed down. We might mimic this face for the child, see if they can mimic it as well, and spend some time looking at that facial expression. We've also got this spinner here, which can be used to help support vocabulary development. Actually, in settings here, we can say we want to show the labels, so we can see the word angry as well. And then this spinner will just take us through all the ways that we need to talk about the word angry with the child. So let's talk about that emotion word and what it means. Once we've talked about angry, let's practice saying the word together so the child's heard you say it and has heard themselves say it. Let's talk about the initial sound of the word. Again, research tells us that we've got to talk a little bit about the structure of a word, not just the meaning of a word, in order to make it stick and be retrievable. And then what's an emotion word that means nearly the same? Can they think of another emotion word that's almost the same as angry? So you might say something like cross for that, for example. And can they think of a word that means the opposite of angry? So you might say calm, or you might say happy. But remember that throughout this, you're giving the child the language. They're struggling with language, so they need you to top them up with language. So try not to turn this into a series of questions. Try to turn it a bit more into statements and conversation. So for this, if I start at the beginning, and just go through what I would be saying. So we're talking about angry, and angry is when somebody is annoyed because things haven't gone the way they thought it would go, or they're feeling frustrated. An example of angry might be if I wanted something really badly and was told I couldn't have it. That might make me feel angry. Then let's say the word out loud together. So we could practice saying angry. Can they copy saying angry? And just spend a bit of time exploring that. The initial sound for angry is ah. So remember here, we're talking about sounds and not letters. So it's not A for angry, it's A for angry. And what's an emotion word that means nearly the same? So cross would be a good word here. Frustrated is quite similar. Can they think of a word that means the opposite? I think I've already mentioned a word like calm or happy. And can we put the word into a sentence? So the boy was feeling angry because his favourite toy had been broken. Something like that. Okay, so that's the way we would use this spinner here. And then when we spent some time working on the word angry, we could either do a bit of whole class review and brainstorming here. So going through each one of these and talking about how it makes us feel. When you click on these, you can type your answer in. I'm just writing rubbish there, and then it shows it up on screen. So you can discuss an answer together and type it up together. You could print that off if you wanted to screen capture it. Then you've also got this idea of something called scenes. Now, what we've got here is, we call it in therapy terms a composite scene. So it's like all sorts of stuff brought together, and it's based around the emotions of angry. So obviously what you can see here is that the older boy loves this dinosaur toy, and his little brother, his baby brother, keeps wanting to play with it, and so he's telling him off, shouting at him, and then the little boy's feeling, or they're both feeling angry actually, and the little boy is feeling upset. We've got a series of questions along the bottom here, and they're written in the style of blank levels of comprehension. This is a whole concept in itself, not something I'm going to get into here, but it's a technique that's used within speech and language therapy and within education to ensure that questions are being asked at the right level of a child's understanding. We've got a module on here called blank. It's in the same module as this emotions one. And if you go into blank, there'll be some help on there which goes into this and explains it a little bit more. But basically, the number besides the question shows the level that this question is aimed at. So this is an easy question, it's level 1. Point to a dinosaur, that's quite concrete. Can the child find the dinosaur? Point to a kettle, where's the kettle? Can they copy a simple expression? Can they then start to answer these next slightly harder questions? Level 2, where are they? What's the boy doing if we point at the older boy? Who is pointing? Find a top that is stripy. Which boy is not wearing shoes? Now we're on to level 3. So not is level 3, and how do you feel is a level 3 type of question. So the questions are now becoming a bit more abstract and a bit less concrete. What do you think the big boy's saying? Can they follow a slightly longer instruction? Then we go on to level 4, which is the hardest blank level to answer. And this now requires that a child can use skills such as inference, prediction, problem solving, justification. And this is a level of comprehension that children will tend to get to by the time they're roughly about 5. Having said that, some children who've got autism, social and emotional mental health needs, attachment needs, they may struggle to get to this level even into their teens. There are a lot of children within school who struggle with inferring information and being able to cope with this type. And it's actually quite important because reading comprehensions will expect you to be able to infer information and be able to read between the lines. So we need to make sure that children are knowing how to answer this sort of question. So here you're asking the question, and then if the child can't answer it, you are answering it for the child. So if we just go through this quickly. So point to a dinosaur. if they can't point to it, then I'd be showing them, I'd be pointing to the dinosaur and saying, well, that's the dinosaur, that big green monster there. Then I'd be pointing to I'd ask them, and if they can't, I would be pointing to the kettle to show them what the kettle is, maybe talking a little bit about a kettle, and then seeing if they can copy me, asking them a where question and explaining to them if they can't answer it. Oh, I think they're in the kitchen. I think I know it's the kitchen because there's a washing machine, there's a kettle, there's a sink and a tap. And then talking about the older boy, what's the boy doing? If they can't answer that, I'd be saying, oh, he's pointing with his finger and he's very angry and he's shouting at the little boy. So you'd go through modelling the correct answer so that the child starts to learn how to answer these questions. And that's how the scenes part of emotions works. So you've got your word cards, your word map and your scenes. Just to quickly go into each, that's word cards, that's word map, and that's scenes, okay? Each of those can be used as a whole class tool or on an iPad individually or for a small group of children. And then you've got your games along the bottom here. So you've got the bubble blaster. And what we're doing this time is we're looking out for all the faces that look angry, and we've got to pop the angry bubbles. So there's one angry face. There's another angry face, another angry face, another angry face. Oh, lots here. If I get it wrong, I'm going to lose a life. So I'm going to get a few wrong here. And eventually when you've got enough of them wrong, your game is over. Close it down. So that's the bubble blaster game, which is just a nice bit of fun. You've got magic cups game. So
angry.
If they don't know what it is, ask them to say it and then get them to click on it, and it will tell them if they're not sure. Start the game. And what's going to happen now is the picture is going to get covered up. So angry is hidden away. And we've got to watch where angry has gone. So I'm using the word angry a lot, and that's what I'd be doing with a child. So where do we think angry is? And the child's got to guess. I think it's that one. Yeah. And then just get a little puff of confetti. Okay, now in settings here, we've got the option to make it go faster. This will move the cups quite a bit faster. I probably, with younger children like 2, 3, 4, I'd use the easy, even up to maybe 5 or 6. But then I'd use the harder setting for children. Or if the children find the easy one is just too easy to use, try the hard one. I'm not going to demonstrate it here. We're just going to come out of that. And then you've got a sorting activity. So let's put all the angry faces in this bucket, everything else in the other bucket. So just drag and drop the angry faces, but be saying what they are while you're doing it as well. So, oh, I think that's a happy face. So that goes in the other bucket. That looks like an angry face. That doesn't look like an angry face. That looks like a surprised face. Oh, I think that one's angry. So again, using the words lots for the child. And that's a happy face and another happy face. And then we've got another angry face and we've finished. And it just gives you the chance. So just some simple games for you to play. And once you've finished working on angry, you could do some work on tired. Or, you know, it depends how much time you want to spend. I'd perhaps focus on angry until I've got that one sorted. Then I'd move on to tired until the child seems to be able to get that. And just work your way through until the child seems pretty consistently confident about being able to recognise and name that particular emotion. And really that's how you would go about using the teaching part of emotions.